panel of 30 under 30s, which is Forbes' special project for young entrepreneurs and young innovators. And we have 20 different categories ranging from social entrepreneurs to food and drink and art. And one of our categories is education. And so when I was invited to come here today to run a 30 under 30 panel, I thought, what better to talk about for education than entrepreneurs who founded their businesses or their enterprises while still in college, or at least came up with the idea for it. So the first thing that I'd like to do is introduce my panel here. We have Joe Vasquez next to me. He's the co-director of Runway Incubator and co-founder of Michelson Runway EdTech Incubator. And he was on the list this year. Then we have Alexis Morin, co-founder of Students for Education Reform, and I believe you were on our very first list.
Yeah, 2012.
2012. And then we have Jacob Allen, also from this year, and he is the CEO, co-founder of Pilot Ed Schools. So very, very briefly, please, because we don't have a lot of time. How did each of you have the experience of college? How did it inform your decision to start a business in college? How did you come up with the idea?
Would you like to start, or I can take it away?
Feel free, go
Before
ahead.
we get started, how's everyone doing today? Oh, come on, we could do a little bit better than that. How's everyone doing today?
She's doing really great.
I realized it's earlier.
We got a wave, yeah.
So, as Caroline mentioned before, my name is Joe Vasquez. I'm originally from New York. Went to Stanford undergrad. I was the first in my family to go to college. And I didn't really have much experience with the college education or really the college experience. My junior year of college, I joined a nonprofit on campus called Stanford Student Enterprises, where we basically facilitated business creation on campus, whether they're selling coupons, t-shirts, etc. We had a surplus of about $250,000 where we decided to invest most of that money in early stage entrepreneurs. We decided the most efficient way to use that capital was to build an accelerator off campus. For most of you who are in the technology space, we converted the program into something called StartX. StartX is an early stage accelerator for Stanford entrepreneurs based out of Palo Alto, California. We work alongside Y Combinator, 500 startups, et cetera. So to date, we have about 30 employees, have invested in well over or supported over 300 entrepreneurs or startups to date. And I could talk a little bit more about my initiatives after, but we'd love to give the floor to Alexis.
Sure. I think the way that you start a business on campus, at least the way that I did with my co-founder, is to just become obsessively passionate about something and slowly narrow your field of focus to your obsession with this one problem and use the resources around you. So we were college students who were incredibly moved by the fact that public schools could be so much better than they are, especially in low-income areas. We'd seen a bunch of schools that were. And then we thought, okay, we can't just like sit back and be consumers of this four-year educational pathway. We have to do something with more urgency to try to affect this problem. And the resources around you when you're a college student are other college students and campus clubs and student group funding and things like that. So I think if you become obsessed with this problem like we did, you start to look at your resources around you. And then once you graduate or move it off campus, there's another whole chapter of the story where you access new resources and you actually have to sort of manage the expectation people had on campus.
Very similar to what Alexis said. I was undergrad at University of Washington and found myself in a class. My major was Society, Ethics, and Human Behavior, so very long major, but found myself alongside Angela Davis and also a great professor of mine, Dr. Janelle Silva. And both of them said, like, read all you want, but once you get out in the community, some certain things are going to smack you in the face, specifically around social institutions and kind of community engagement. And so for us, we actually had to get out in the field. We had to kind of see some groundbreaking, sometimes even just like 10 people doing something on the side of the street. to kind of look at ourselves in the mirror and say, maybe we should start something. Maybe we can go out and impact a community, create a space, or really volunteer and be a part of a space that already existed. And so in the very, very early stages, similar to what Alexis was saying, it was really getting out there, finding passion for where it is that you wanted to go, and just being crazy enough, I think, at the time to say you're going to make it a reality one day.
Great. So how many here have been to college? How many people here are college graduates? Okay, so as we all know, college is a time of real exploration and experimentation. So I would like our three founders here to talk about what are the benefits of founding an enterprise while still in college, and also what are the downsides? And I'm just going to point two out right off the bat, one of which is you're still very young, and the other of which is financial.
So Alexis mentioned before that universities and colleges have a tremendous wealth of resources that you can access on campus, whether it's funding, mentorship, etc. But the unfortunate reality is that there is a tremendous racial wealth gap that we see in new business creation. 60% of businesses that are created right now are created predominantly by the middle class. Between the 1990s and 2000s, we've seen a stagnation in small business creation, predominantly due to lower accumulation of wealth amongst the middle class. And that is further exacerbated by racial and wealth lines. This also spills over into universities and colleges. Particularly, my freshman year roommate was low income, Latino, a lot of great ideas for a startup, but he didn't really have the resources, the wherewithal, or the family background to really understand how to start the business or where to find the resources on campus. My junior year roommate started a company that most of us all know called Snapchat. Evan Spiegel and the rest of the team were all roommates of mine in my fraternity. My fraternity was very high net worth or students who came from very privileged background. They started $100 million companies, multi-billion dollar companies, and the divide was extremely apparent between my freshman and junior year. So I think we need to really address structural inequity before, and universities are a great way to do that, and they could build programs such as co-op programs, et cetera, to better support underserved entrepreneurs. But we really need to radically rethink how we better support lower socioeconomic students to create new businesses, new ideas, new nonprofits, et cetera.
Yeah, that would be awesome to have like a component of like federal work study that plugged you into an accelerator.
Yeah, and and kind of on that note, when I went out into the community, so granted, social impact work, education work now, as we kind of defined ourselves at Pilot Ed, when I went out into the community, I did see a lot of people who looked like me. I saw people who shared a similar socioeconomic background as I did. And so that was really affirming for me. I utilized a lot of campus organizations at the time that attracted me because of my passion, and I said, like, let's get out there. And so once we got out there, I definitely was affirmed by what I saw. I will say that I still to this day look back and realize I didn't leverage the academic resources that were right in front of me to the best of my ability. In terms of amazing thought partners in this work, great research coming out of the University of Washington and then later at Kellogg, which I attended. And I found that there was so much that I could have done that I didn't do. And so I'm right now mentoring a couple entrepreneurs in the undergrad space, and that's the first thing I said. I was like, look at what your institution has to offer. If it's an entrepreneurship class, great, but it's really those resources that you have to dig for, but they're definitely there.
So we have a Stanford grad here who went also through Teach for America, and U of Washington and Kellogg grad, also Teach for America alumni. And Alexis is a Princeton non-graduate. So she.
Say it, Caroline.
So what Alexis experienced may be the very best thing a student entrepreneur can wish for, and that is that you achieved such success while still in school that you decided, I'm not going back. So tell us a little bit about that. Do you have what was that like to make that decision, and do you have any regrets?
Zero regrets, although I would love for Princeton, if any of you are on the Princeton board or know people on the Princeton board, to allow me to finish my last semester with a field study. I will write all of the papers, I will read all of the books, but I cannot be on campus 5 days a week while running an organization. Yeah, I don't regret it at all. I'm having this incredible opportunity to pursue my passion, and although Princeton's very stingy about me being on campus for this last semester, the alumni network and the administrators and the student group funding were totally crucial to us for getting off the ground. And then just to take you into the moment of deciding this had enough momentum that it actually made sense to leave school. My co-founder and I, the first year, started a student group. The second year, we grew it to 20 college campuses. And then New Schools Venture Fund set us up with a stipend to spend the summer between junior and senior year developing the idea for a nonprofit that would support and coordinate all of those chapters. So this was a huge breakthrough moment, and we even flew out to their summit during our finals period junior year and kind of like ditched the second half of the summit because people were coming up to us and treating us like we were actually running this business full time, and that helped us have this aha moment, like, why wouldn't we? Like, there's so much potential here. We're so passionate about it. Why do we have to follow this preordained sort of 4-year track and delay the next step for another 18 months? So we started to scribble out this business plan, and then New Schools Venture Fund set us up with some funding so that we could live in San Francisco and develop that plan over the summer. By the end of the summer, we'd raised a few $100,000 and recruited our board and hired our first 3 staff members. And our board members said to us, so have you told your parents you're not going back to school? And we were like, I guess we're not going back to school. We didn't really think this all the way through. So we spent Labor Day having some dramatic, challenging conversations with our parents, but ultimately we're lucky that our parents said, we recognize how passionate you are and how unique this opportunity is. But it has not died down as a conversation in the Morin household. I talk about this with my mom every time I am home.
So, but all of you have made that leap from college entrepreneur to real world entrepreneur. So talk a little bit about the growing pains of starting something within, I guess you could say, a relative cocoon and heading out, touching on things, if you might, on like investors and touching on things like, and this is a really important one that I think we could all just investigate on a personal basis, which is like, when did you finally realize that you didn't need someone to say, okay, you can be an entrepreneur, and that you just decided to be one?
I think for me, it was when I realized that I couldn't fake it anymore, right? I had this idea, I had this group of people kind of volunteering with us, creating this quote unquote after school program at the time. But very similar to what Alexis said, like I was at New Schools Venture Fund, I was at some summits, and people were treating me as if this thing was already up and running, as if the school already existed. And so for me, I had to like kind of run home and look at my team and say, oh no, like we gotta do this thing, you know? There are expectations out there of us. And I think that was for me the moment when I felt comfortable enough to kind of jump, because I realized that other people were willing to take this jump with us. And they weren't necessarily my team. There were people that we were meeting who potentially could be a funder. There were people we were meeting who potentially wanted to send their kids to our school. And that was the scariest, I think, for most entrepreneurs, the scariest moment. But I also know that it was a moment that made me realize that we were potentially onto something.
Did you have any commitment phobia before making the leap?
Oh, absolutely. If you don't have commitment phobia, you're doing the wrong thing. Did you find that?
So the question was, what made us realize that it was the right time to start something, or?
Well, talk a little bit about your experience of moving from the college campus to the real world as far as being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so most of the struggles associated with being a younger entrepreneur have to do with social capital. Oftentimes, the way to scale your company really revolves around your social network, social capital, and your access to social resources. That's just really the name of the game, and it's particularly prevalent in a place like this. So unfortunately, as you're younger, you really don't have that social capital, so we have to be really thoughtful about building a board and a mentor network so that we could basically tap their networks and exponentially expand our opportunities, whether it's to investors and other partners, et cetera. So that was one thing that we really thought about. And fortunately, we've been able to tap into programs like Forbes, the Schusterman Foundation, Reality, et cetera, that have really helped expand our opportunities, our mindsets, and really help us think creatively with other young entrepreneurs.
Speaking
And
of
Alexis and I are both part of, actually all of us are part of the Forbes and Schusterman Foundation program that have been extremely helpful.
So speaking of investors, do you take a temperature here? Do you find that investors are more open than ever as far as funding young people, definitely under 30, but even college students?
So as an investor right now, we work predominantly with lower income and minority entrepreneurs. And we find more often than not, Teach for America and people who have been in the classroom have all of the skills to be an effective entrepreneur, whether it's grit, fortitude, creativity, project management, leadership. All of the hallmarks of great entrepreneurs are oftentimes reflected by teachers who have been in the classroom. And I think people oftentimes overlook former educators as potential entrepreneurs, but I think they are great entrepreneurs in every sense of the word. So we tend to look for people who empathize, understand the communities that they come from. And usually students who have been close to the classrooms, et cetera, do reflect more education or innovative education ideas that we tend to invest in through Michelson Runway.
Have you ever had someone say, no, you're too young?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
No?
no one has said that to me, but I see it playing a role in decision making.
Yeah, in the charter school space, I'm regularly finding myself as one of the youngest kind of founders when I get to some of these larger summits. And I've had funders say, we'll wait till your second school's open, and then we'll talk. And so I keep those people close as well. But I think it's one of those things where you kind of lead and you're like, but this person, this funder, this person kind of came forward and was willing to take a bet. Why not? And I think a lot of that comes down to kind of, the portfolio that they fund. If you dig deep enough, you'll realize that all of these institutions that they're funding have been around for 5, 10 years. And so, sometimes they wait until you get to that level before they'll touch you. I really enjoy what I call the dream funders, right? So the people that look at you, believe in what you're doing, maybe believe in you more than they believe in the work, which sometimes is a double-edged sword. But those individuals and those organizations are normally the ones that are taking a bet with us, right? Our school won't be open until fall 2018 after running an after-school program for the past 4 years. And so it's a mix, I would say, kind of with that early stage and later stage funder. But I've heard no a lot. It's part of the process for me.
So I want to add in something that I think you can do if you're a young person founding something to increase your chances that you'll be taken seriously. And that is, speaking with my nonprofit perspective, Joe, maybe you can add a bit about the for-profit piece. Building a board of incredible professionals with experience who are willing to be a working board while you are a young founder. And many nonprofit boards very deliberately stay totally out of the operations. That's actually probably more typical. But when you have never done any accounting, you have never hired someone, you can barely tie your shoes and learn how to find an apartment, and you are expected to now build out this company, and you want to, right? You need people who you can check your decisions with and borrow resources from, who are also willing to sort of share their incredibly hard-earned credibility with you and your emerging brand and organization. So we were so fortunate to have incredible founding board members at Students for Education Reform who did so much work early on and really helped take donor meetings with us and helped explain how they saw what we were doing is relevant based on their career.
Absolutely.
So helpful. So I think finding that board, it's totally necessary, and it's also going to help donors take you more seriously and see that you know how to build a complementary team.
Everyone here, I fully encourage you, if you're not on a board right now for a young organization, fully encourage you to do it. It's a great way to give back, to lend your expertise and really get involved with young entrepreneurs who will be the next generation of organizations. Alexis, how were you able to convince these board members for a nascent organization to get involved when you didn't really have the track record, the expertise, et cetera?
Yeah, I think the first thing was like an insane amount of passion that they actually found really refreshing. Like they were like, wow, actually I get a lot of energy out of spending time around this organization. And also, even before we asked about the board, giving them regular, like, every other month updates to say, here's how much more traction we gained, how many more chapters we opened and students we recruited. So I think people are going to check in with how do I feel when I spend time around this organization, because there is a risk. So you need to counterbalance that with some upside.
Absolutely.
And I think if they love your mission and they get totally invested in your passion, and you are also helping them learn, right? Because they're going to do a lot of teaching, but it can go both ways. So for example, our organization is incredibly racially diverse. It's very intentional. And we learned a lot about what it means to build an inclusive culture. And a lot of education organizations are on this path. For some of our board members, they got to see us go down this road before it became something that many, many organizations were doing, and they will even say it transformed them like their life personally and the way they approach their businesses. So help them learn, show them traction, and hook them in with the mission and your passion. Yeah.
All right, so in our last few minutes, I just want to point out that so many schools now are jumping on the entrepreneur train. They have programs, they have degrees, they have incubators, and I'm just wondering, of these three people here on stage, none of which have majored in entrepreneurship, what do you think of these programs? Can you learn to be an entrepreneur in a classroom? Is it better to learn it in a dormitory? Where can you learn it? Where does it come from?
In the field. For me, it was literally being out there, being scrappy with other people who were already doing it, and seeing that was more of a lesson than I think I could have ever had in some of my classes. I kind of look back at even my experience at Kellogg as being more just practical knowledge on how to apply certain things, rather than how to go out there and be gritty, how to go out there and like not know what you're doing, but learn how to fly that airplane. So I would say no, and I mean from my experience, and I know that I've had good friends who definitely went the entrepreneurship route and had great success with that.
Yeah, I would say entrepreneurship fundamentally is a mindset, and when you tee it up too much for early stage entrepreneurs, it really doesn't allow them to demonstrate their ability to take advantage of opportunities to think creatively and to demonstrate grit. For example, in the Michelson Runway Accelerator, we provide a wealth of resources, unstructured in a sense, and we give our entrepreneurs the opportunity to take advantage of everything. We find that the most motivated entrepreneurs will take advantage of all of the resources that we provide, go on to demonstrate tremendous success, raising Series A funding, etc. So we see that early entrepreneurship programs at schools like Stanford, etc., while they do give you resources, if it's overstructured, really fundamentally goes against what we think of traditional entrepreneurship today. We also find that academic institutions really don't have the structures in place to support for-profit entrepreneurship. For example, at Stanford, the Office for Intellectual Property didn't really have the structures to support early stage entrepreneurs, in the sense that anything created on campus would take significant portions of the company if it was created on campus. So we didn't really have forward-thinking policymakers or administrators on campus to support early stage entrepreneurs, which is precisely the reason why we moved StartX completely off campus.
Yeah, like 1 inch off campus.
So in our final 30 seconds, what's your take? Yes or no?
I took a social entrepreneurship class. It was interesting, but I think if colleges want to create this climate on campus, you have to bring sort of like near peer entrepreneurs, not the super illustrious like Muhammad Yunus, but people who have founded things just a few years ahead of your student body, and put them in front of your students and let them interact and let people develop that hunger because they see that it's possible. Based on your class background, for example, you may have never seen someone launch such a high growth startup. So being able to see that person and imagine that that could be you, have real conversations, I think that's probably the biggest thing a university could do to support their undergrads and change the seat time requirements.
Okay, thanks very much for everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Good job.